Natalie, do we still have people that is waiting to come in, or can we start?
There's no one left in the waiting room, but I'll admit them as soon as they pop in.
Super. So let's start. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it, and it's very nice to see that it's a truly African webinar. We are so looking forward to it. But as always, I just need to do a spot of advertising. And that is that we have our IABC Africa conference this year in October. So we haven't had our conference for quite a while. So we're really looking forward to this one. It's from the 8th to the 10th of October. It's in the lovely Cape. So if that's not enough to entice you to come and join us at the conference, I'm not sure what is going to do the actual thing. And it's at the Vineyard. We have had our conferences there previously. And it's nice because this is going to be a real Pan-African gathering. We are going to look at excellence, innovation, impact, and events that can bring us together. We have our lovely awards function. So our Silver Pool winners are going to be announced there. We're going to have master classes. And I'm just looking at the people on the call, and nudge, nudge, wink, wink. There's a few of you that I know that still wants to write your CMP and your SCMP exams. And this could be the perfect venue to come and write your exam, and then we can celebrate at our awards function. So I don't know whether I should call people out like, you know, Rachel, but just putting it out there. So, and
thank you.
And then we are looking at our conference fee. That's for everything: the attendance, the gala function, the cocktails is about 6,200 Rand, or about $350. That's absolutely nothing if you think it is for 3 days and it's going to be worth your while. So if you're interested, please send an email to info@iabc.co.za, and Natalie can send through all the information. Okay, but that's enough of our blurbs and putting the IABC there. That's not why you're here today. You are here today because we need to talk about ESG, building trust, not trouble. So I have a client, and the comment was made by the CEO of the client that they really don't want to spend more than half an hour a year on ESG. And that got me thinking, so what is ESG? Is it a tick box exercise? Is it just something that we need to do? And from a communication point of view, what is our responsibility? Do we need to be at the end of the line and just make the poster and put the report together and make sure that the grammar is good? Or should we be part of the entire process where we can influence what the decisions are? And we got this amazing panel of people together to help us talk about that, to see what our views are. So I'm quickly going to introduce them to all of you. So let me just do this. So Muthoni Kanyana, we are going to start with her. She is from Kenya, and she just let us know that everything is still fine. So we are really glad to hear that. So Muthoni is an ESG specialist, and she is certified with a Global Reporting Initiative as their Africa region partner. She is passionate about climate and sustainability, and she was part of the African Sustainability Leadership Program by the University of Cambridge. She has vast experience in sustainability, ESG strategy, and then what's important for us is the communication management and GRI reporting. She is the CEO, the founder, the runner, the be-it-all of MK Africa, and they are an ESG consultancy, and she's also worked with numerous amazing people in different countries. So if you are here, you surely read her blurb and you know who the people are that she has worked for. She comes from banking, so she understands numbers, and she is running a youth initiative. My apologies. And Muthoni, we are looking forward to hear what you are going to say and how you are doing ESG, and telling us some of your stories of how you made ESG work. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Christine.
Our next person is Pieter Scholtz. So Pieter, unfortunately, has a bit of an unfair advantage, as I have worked with him previously. But why I asked Pieter to come, why I asked Pieter to be part of this panel is he is a engineer who understands communication, and that's a very rare combination. So he has the ability to dumb things down so that even I can understand it. Pieter has been working in sustainability, risk, and communication for the past 15 years. He is currently the COO of DigbyWells, and they are working, and they have projects in 78 countries across the world. So it's truly a global company. And Pieter, we are looking forward to that knowledge and that experience that you are going to share with us. In his current role, as well as his previous roles, he worked for, it was within ESG for KPMG and for Muthoni. And the main thing is he's able to unlock financial value and to reduce risk through ESG. So Pieter, I'm going to assume ESG is not a tick box exercise for you. And he believes it is impossible. He believes it's impossible for ESG strategies to be implemented properly without the involvement of astute communication practices and professionals. Music to our ears. We can't wait. Thanks, Pieter.
Thanks, Christine.
And then we have Ilse Blank. Ilse is well known within our IABC circles. She served on our IABC Africa board. And Ilse has also won numerous awards in terms of reporting and investor relations. So Ilse is also an SCMP. So Ilse, thank you very much for that. Sorry, now this is Murphy. I apologize.
Oh, shit, Christine.
Sorry. So Ilse is a communication advisor. She is an award-winning writer, and she has more than 30 years experience in integrated reporting and business communication. So she has clients like Deloitte, like EU. She's working through all over the Africa continent, the Middle East, and everywhere. So she has a huge global footprint where she can make an impact as a communication practitioner. She's also the founder of CQ Consulting, and she helps business leaders and organizations build trust and communicate with clarity and conscience. So Ilse, that word conscience, I'm looking forward to see how we can pull that through into ESG. So
Thanks.
that is our panel. So once again, thank you so much for your time and for being here. Okay, we're already 10 minutes into this, so let's get starting and rolling. So the whole idea is I'm going to ask you questions, and then I'm going to ask you to please answer me, give me a case study. But please, even let's say, for example, it is only for that I'm asking the question to Ilse. Please feel free to jump in if you have an opinion. And to all our participants out there, if you have a question, please pop it in the chat. Rihanna will then flag it, and then we can answer it as we go along. Super. So Pieter, seeing that you are the only male, let's start with you. Okay. How do you see the relationship between ESG and business sustainability? And where does strategic communication fit into this mix?
Thanks, Christine. There isn't a straightforward answer. Let me start there, right? It, to a very large extent, depends where you are in the world and also how mature an organization has become. Let me give you an example. Larry Fink, he's the CEO of BlackRock and one of the largest private capital companies globally, and one of the most eminent senior leaders in the USA. And he has come out saying that he and BlackRock have stopped using the politicized term ESG.
Okay,
right?
why?
Because ESG in America has become a political playbook. It is like, so they call it, the Republicans call it woke capitalism. The Democrats are driving it to the nth degree. So similar to gun control and abortion rights, it has become something that now sits in between the two big party powerhouses. If you speak to scholars in Europe, they would tell you, and this is probably the most accepted answer, that ESG is looking at a regulatory compliance component. So what must I report against when I think about environmental matrices, social matrices, governance matrices? So it's very much looking at what is my stakeholders, what are my stakeholders interested in hearing and seeing how I'm performing.
Okay.
And they think about sustainability then as broader company sustainability. So that would come back to that triple bottom line sustainability. How do I make sure that I'm financially okay whilst being environmentally conscious and socially uplifted? Right? So they have a slightly different nuance to it. Now we're seeing your client that said they want to spend 30 minutes on this is probably falling in that type of category. And we're seeing many of those companies across the continent. The companies that have matured on the ESG journey have gotten to the space where they realize that ESG and sustainability, if you do it right, is the same thing. Because if you report what you are doing from a sustainability perspective effectively, and you integrate it into your company strategy seamlessly, there's actually a financial upside. So, and this is a whole different discussion, but there's top line growth, there's bottom line growth, there's productivity increases in the company, there's a de-risking of profits linked to sustainability related risks. So when we say ESG and sustainability, you need to be careful to compartmentalize them, because the moment you do that, you are limiting the impact it can have on your organization. And this is now where the communication professionals become so critical, because I can still report all the ESG metrics that I have to, but in a way that tells the narrative of my sustainability journey. What is the real impact I'm having on the communities around me? What is the impact that my labor force wants to see me having as a company that attracts the best talent, that retains the best talent? It is, how do I tell this story to the communities on my doorstep and to my shareholders sitting in the global north in a way that is applicable to what they want to hear, without obviously telling them different stories. So this is how all of these things come together, and why that's a little bit more difficult than just saying this is ESG and this is sustainability.
Super. Thank you very much. So that brings us to the next one. And Muthoni, I'm going to ask you, how can ESG communication inspire innovation and social impact, not just compliance? And what role do communication professionals play in bringing those stories to life? So you are focusing on the S, which is social, in the ESG part. Okay. Please share with us.
Thank you, Christine. And thank you for this warm welcome that you gave me a few minutes ago. You mentioned in my bio that I have founded something known as My Little Big Thing, which is a social impact initiative that my company and I started working on about 8 or so years ago. And it's a platform to discover and support young innovators who are turning our continent's greatest challenges into businesses with real social and environmental impact. So my contribution today will focus on how we as communicators can be able to bridge the gap between telling these wonderful, incredible stories of grassroots innovation and bring that into our corporate reporting. So if I could just come back to the question that you asked me, I think this is the most important question we could ask, because for very long, ESG communication has been seen as a backward-looking exercise. You know, we report on what has already been done. But the true power for us as communicators lies in our ability to look forward and inspire what we will do. Yeah. So our role as communication professionals is to transform from being mere reporters into being almost scouts for innovation and amplifying the stories that are happening out there. Because, you know, one of the things that we believe at MK Africa is that we are creating the African narrative for sustainability. Sustainability is already innate in what we do here in Africa. So it's just to go out for us as communicators and find the story. So take, for example, if I think of a young Kenyan innovator who we worked with a few years ago, who has a project called Ecotopia Pavers, which turns plastic wastes into building materials. So a traditional report might say, we recycled X tons of plastic, and compliance.
The numbers,
Yes. That's what compliance is. But if you were to focus on the innovation in that story, then you can retell Sharon's story and say, we started by stating, you start by stating the plastic waste is a material issue because it always has to focus on materiality. So it's a material issue for our business and for our community. And then we talk about Sharon and her business and how we saw the problem and engineered a solution. And then we provide the numbers. Her work has diverted X kilograms of plastic from landfills and created Y number of jobs, the S, okay? And then also, because I know we're gonna be talking a bit about greenwashing, you have to be honest about the scale. Yeah. So you have to be clear that this is a project that we have supported as an organization, as a corporate organization, not one that we own. So we don't want to claim that we have solved the entire plastic crisis.
Yeah.
But we want to show
wish.
that we wish. But we want to show that we're fostering innovative models that are scalable. So this kind of approach transforms a report from just a dry compliance document into a compelling portfolio of the future and how we're helping to build into that and inspiring everyone from the employees to investors reading that report by showing how our ESG strategy is creating real tangible social impact.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that, Muthoni. So, Ilse, what role should communication professionals play across the ESG reporting journey? As I said in the beginning, should we just be like in the end and say, yeah, sure, what do we want? How many posters do you want of this, and how many social news blurbs? Or how do we measure whether what we report on is relevant, is interesting, like Muthoni says, but it still ticks all those legal governance boxes? How have you been doing that in the past years, where you have won all these awards? Because obviously you are doing something right. So please share that formula with us.
Thanks, Christine. Thanks for having me here. And it's really great to see such a lovely community on this call, and really encouraging that so many people care about this topic. So, Christine, I think the days of relegating communication professionals to just taking care of the posters, I think they are really falling in the rear view mirror. I think organizations are increasingly recognizing that smart comms professionals, right, strategic-minded comms professionals can actually add value in a big way. I mean, I remember when I started in corporate communication, we used to call the annual report the glossy, because we used to spend tons of money on the glossies. I mean, the more the more shiny it was, the better
Yeah.
job you had done. And the thicker it was, we called it the thud test. The heavier it was, the better job you had done.
Yes.
So there was very little consideration for what it
Content.
contains and what it is supposed to do. So I think as a communication professional who understands the organization, and that's key, is making sure you understand the organization, whether you're a consultant coming in or one of the employees, is to really be an integral part of the process. You start talking about an annual report, probably, 12 months before it needs to be published. There's no lastminute.com with these things. And you sometimes say, how can I speak to someone in February for something we're going to publish in October? It doesn't make sense, but actually it does, because it's a series of conversations. The data must be collected on an ongoing basis. And the more comms professionals are involved with that and able to participate in understanding what the numbers are saying to us, the greater value we can add. And I think it comes down to, and that's just before. Then during, it's getting the masses of data and conveying it for the different stakeholders very clearly. Now, there's definitely no one size fits all. We know that our stakeholders are broad, our stakeholders are diverse, even multilingual in some instances, and also reporting standards. Although there are international ones, some countries are not bound by reporting standards, and others are, and others want to report even though they're not bound by standards. So the organization's leadership has to say, what do we want this report to achieve for us? And I think the thing that I'm seeing increasingly more is that leaders, boards, executives are saying, we understand now that I don't even want to call it an ESG report, because I think the conversation is, as Pieter said, around sustainability, but we understand that this reporting process is actually key in risk management. And I think very importantly, reputation management for your stakeholders, for your clients, the communities you serve, your people. Your people will look at those reports. They will say, why did you mention that thing from then? Oh, no, it wasn't important for the report, right? But it's around this increased accountability. So the strength that we have as communicators is we're often transversal in the organization. We don't just do one little piece of communication. So you understand that there's a financial element, there's the brand element, there's a positioning element, there's the human element. And all those things do need to come together and be tangible. So the standards call for clarity, they call for consistency, they call for evidence and data. And we bring that voice. We can look for balance and to connect the dots, especially over a period of time. And most importantly for me, it drives at the end of the day accountability. And that's what stakeholders are increasingly asking for.
Absolutely. Can I ask a tactical question? So it's not necessarily a strategic question. You said that you have to get all the data, and who is responsible for that data verification? Does it lie within the comms department? Does it lie within the department that's sending you that information? Because I'm picking up there's a bit of an internal struggle within organization when it comes to that. If I'm from, let's say, HR, nothing against HR, it's just a department, and I'm sending you information, I don't want you to come back and check my numbers, because sometimes if we do come back and check, then there's a mistake. So where does that accountability lie to ensure that our reporting is ethical, that it is so that everybody is accountable? Because it can't be the practitioner that's being held accountable, or am I reading it wrong?
So, Christine, and it's a very valid question, because what you'll often find is, the comms professional at the end of the day gets slapped with 150 spreadsheets and you must, go sort it out. And that's not really an ideal process at all. That's really not. what you need is a program manager, could be led by the sustainability department or whatever the organization chooses to call it. It's definitely around governance and oversight. So someone somewhere needs to be responsible for the information in the organization. So then there'll be systems. So it could be around IT where the information is integrated. And often more companies than you realize run on Excel spreadsheets. Like that's, and you go, we've got these amazing systems that can gather data, and now with AI, it can help you to even draw conclusions from the data. Okay, but they don't. We have tons of spreadsheets, and then we've got processes. So we'll have people, systems, and processes that must come together. And generally, there is an element of governance and oversight. That's when it works well, is there's accountability for the source of the data, but then there's assurance in the process as well. This is where you get third-party assurance, where another party will come in and check the data. I can only sit with my calculator and see if it adds up, but I can't say that, in fact, we employed so many people on this date. That is around third-party verification and also ownership in the business. But I think it's an interesting process because it's part of the transformation that many companies are going through and struggling with. Because the reporting requirements, if you are a certain kind of company in size, in jurisdictions, it is expected of you to do that. So you have to invest in your people, your processes, and your systems.
Thank you. So Pieter, are you one of the guys that's on Excel sheets, or do you have at least have a system that you work from? Or am I now asking bedroom questions?
So that would depend which company I'm working for, right? Okay. There's amazing platforms out there that has all the data that you need already integrated on a platform. Most clients have information in spreadsheets, in Word documents, then some comes out of SAP and some comes out of things. So the reality is for comms professionals, and I think Ilse summed it up really, really well, is the way I would specifically urge them to go about this is to make sure that the responsibility for checking data validity, accuracy, is excluded from the scope of work, because clearly there might not always be the capability to do that. Now, there are exceptions, right? We just did a report for one of our mining clients, and they showed a massive jump in female employment from the previous year to this year. Now, my expectation would be that a communication professional that gets that data would then go back and say, hey, there's been a huge jump here. This looks great. Can you tell me the stories?
Absolutely, yes.
And then you either get the stories or, oh no, it's wrong information. So I think there's some logic that can be applied, but in principle, there should be other governance systems in place that I don't necessarily think is the communication professional's responsibility.
Okay. So what makes an ESG communication strategy credible across audiences, from the investors to the local communities? I mean, because they are the most vastly different audiences that you can get. So what are the red flags that we must avoid?
Okay, so credibility firstly comes from sharing all the information. Right? Whenever you read a report and it's just beautiful, good news stories and it's incredible performance, I'm immediately sort of sitting up straight wondering, what are you hiding? Because there's literally only one company that I have ever worked for that I couldn't scratch out any negative things about. So it is telling the great stories, but it's also making sure that you tell where are we falling short. So another client we just completed their previous financial year's report for, in their report, they said, this is how much revenue we lost in the last financial year because of flooding in our mines. The big floods happening in Mpumalanga, they lost significant revenue because the mines were flooded. And they specifically put that in and said that clearly our adaptation processes aren't yet where it needs to be. These are the plans that we are putting in place to make sure that our climate change adaptation strategies are improving and will mitigate these risks going forward. Now, their report is very specifically focused towards their lenders' requirements. So as a lender, that's exactly what you want to see. You want to understand what are the risks, where did performance fall short, and what are being done about it. They discuss all health and safety, all the big issues that happened, and how it was investigated, what the outcomes were, what are the mitigation measures that's put in place. So from a credibility perspective, it's firstly telling the whole story.
Yes.
But secondly, it's also telling the story in a way that the audience is receptive for. And this is one of the things where I think communication professionals can be a lot more influential in these projects is, okay, let's take my client again. You want to do this report only for your lenders. That's your big drive. But latest research shows that highly qualified millennials, on our 50% of them, are looking at a company's sustainability performance before they decide to join. That's 80% for Gen Zs, right? So yes, this report is going to your lenders, but this is what you can do to get the narrative out to make sure you attract and retain your best talent. Then there needs to be a different way of communicating it. How does your workforce like to receive data? I did a project for a large auto manufacturer on the coast, let me rather say it like that. And they had very specific messages that had to get to their communities. But their communities are a very, the average age is in the low 40s or in the low 30s. So how do you create TikTok-like videos that is short enough and poignant enough for the community to hear your story and to realize what they're doing? So communication professionals need to understand and need to ask, why are we doing this? Who are the different audiences? How do these audiences receive information in the best possible way so that we can determine how do we give that to them?
Thank you. So Ilse, how do you write what's supposed to be a boring legal document for the community members, the TikTok video social guys, the investors? So how do you combine that so that the report that you deliver still ticks all of those boxes and the legal requirements? Because I think that's also one of our biggest headaches as communication practitioners is we want to write the story and give the narrative and make it interesting, and legal is no, you can only say it in this one way, and then there's this clash. So what is your experience and advice to make sure that we get to Pieter's audience, to the investor, but still make it interesting and keep legal happy? It sounds like a marriage.
Yeah, sorry, I thought I was muted. You know, I think and this is probably why some communicators shy away from getting involved in integrated reports, corporate reporting, it is complicated. Let's be clear. It is complicated. And I actually have found a lot of young communicators resist getting involved in this. It's like, it's easier to do the newsletter than it is to do that. And it really is. If that's what you want to do, that's absolutely fine. But if you want to play at that board level, executive level, this is how you can add a huge amount of value. So I think it always begins with, Who are your stakeholders? What do they need to know? How do they want to consume that information? We have to make sure it's not a tick box, but on the other hand, the reporting requirements expect certain information. So, in fact, I think last year, yes, it was 2024, the European Union implemented new reporting standards, which now impacts a whole other layer of the commercial segments in the EU. And this has pushed I was on a webinar recently on corporate integrated reporting, and they were saying that on average, the requirements have pushed up the size of reports to double the size, and the teams involved have doubled as a consequence of that. Now you can imagine the project overlay. Now you say, right, we've got all this information, let's say 200, on a good day, 200 pages of information. Who needs to know what? And it boils down to your stakeholder matrix, understanding your stakeholders. What matters to them? What do they care about? Audit committees will care about certain things. Your investors will care about certain things. Your lenders will care about certain things. The teenager at school who's planning on maybe following a career in your organization, they care about something else. So I do think it's almost like a pyramid type of thing where we've got to make sure we have the bulk of the information at the top for the regulators, etc., and then start tailoring it. Now, just because you tailor something doesn't mean the message is different. Okay. It's the delivery that's different. So it's not around being schizophrenic. You know, we've got this story here, and now we're going to tell this story here. Yeah. No, it's the same story told differently for different audiences. And if it boils down to making a TikTok video to engage local audiences and encourage them to participate in community activities or social impact or benefit from social impact, or even to hold your organization in higher esteem, give more space, time, understanding for the challenges of the organization, you would have already started achieving your comms objectives, you know. But it's very difficult if you're going to walk into a local community and put the 200-pager in front of them. They're not going to consume it, and you would have done the report, but you wouldn't have communicated it. So I think that's the difference that people need to consider. And that is, I think, a huge strategic advantage that communications professionals can bring, is being able to decipher and translate that for executives and boards.
I love it. Thank you. Pieter, I think that you've given a lot of communicators on this webinar an idea, and I think that we're going to see an upflare on TikTok videos to get sustainability messages out there. So thank you. Okay. Muthoni, many ESG reports remain unread and unused, to now link back to what Ilse just said. So how do we turn these into action plans? But not only to deliver them, but to inform our CSI, to inform our stakeholder engagement, our internal messaging strategies. How do we use it as a document that's beneficial to us as communicators, and not just the thump and the glossy thing that is out there and it looks good on a coffee table?
Yeah, I like that, because I tell a lot of my clients, they spend 6, sometimes even a year, as Ilse was saying, working on this glossy document. And I think some of us are still stuck in the third and the third test. What were you calling it? And the problem is that we see the ESG report as communicators as a final product, and it's not. Right? It should be seen as a central library, so to speak, of our strategic stories and our data. So you could actually build your entire communication strategy around your ESG report, and if you do it very strategically. And you know, I like to give examples, and I'll refer often to some of the work that I have done in the past, just for illustration. But if you think about, for example, your corporate social investment, then the report's materiality assessment and case studies become the blueprint for how much you've spent on CSI. So instead of reactive donations, your report can guide you, and you can have a powerful story about, for example, a youth-led enterprise in your report, and your CSI strategy should be asking, how can we fund and scale 5 more innovators or enterprises such as these? When it comes to stakeholder engagement, then a report, again, is your ESG report is a fantastic tool for dialogue. So don't just send a PDF link, which is, again, what happens. So you launch this glitzy, you have a glitzy ESG report launch, you have your 200-page plus document, and then after that, it's reduced to a PDF link. And that's, 12 months almost of work is reduced to a link that appears at the bottom of your email signature. So instead of that, you can have a community meeting where you open with a story from the report. So you can say our report identified water access, for example, as a key priority, and we featured a story on a prepaid water meter project. So let's discuss, is this the right kind of solution that we should be supporting? And that can be the basis for your stakeholder engagement. So it turns what is traditionally a monologue into a genuine conversation where you're having people giving you feedback about your report. And then the one that really gets to me is that so many times I work with clients on an ESG report, and their staff have not, some of them don't even know that they have an ESG report out there. Your employees are your most important audience. They should be the first to see the report. So the story...
And sorry, to understand the report, because I think that is what is missing.
Exactly. So, the stories in your report should be front and center in your internal comms. Okay. So feature the stories on your intranet, have them speak, get people, the case studies that you have in your report, have those projects coming into your town halls. So this builds a lot of pride in your internal stakeholders and turns your employees into the most passionate and credible ESG ambassadors you could have. Yeah, and then of course you should also, as Ilse was saying, frame your messages for your innovators. For your investors as well. So frame your local innovations as globally relevant solutions. There's ways that you can go about it. So a story about a project, for example, that turns waste into fuel briquettes is not just a local story. It's a powerful case study for circular economies. Yeah, and how can, and these are circular economies in emerging markets, and this can apply to anywhere in the world, and your investors are interested in such stories. And so it's just about being creative and how you frame your messaging, but don't reduce your 6 months plus of hard work to a PDF link. There's so much wealth of information in there that you can be able to use.
Thank you, Muthoni. Thanks for that. So that brings me to my next question. I want to make it a combined answer to both Ilse and to Pieter, because I know that you are both extremely passionate about metrics. So Pieter, you are passionate in terms of what is the bottom line, what's the financial impact, how sustainability is going to look for the business. Ilse, where your metrics in terms of the IABC framework is more towards, as professional communicators, we need to be able to measure the impact of our results. So we're running out of time. So you literally have 2 minutes each to answer me this question. So Pieter, shall we start with you? What is the importance of metrics in sustainability and in reporting from your organizational point of view, and how you support your clients?
So, I don't really know how you report unless you do.
Sorry, Pieter, you are extremely soft. Can you maybe just sit slightly closer to the microphone? Sorry.
That's better?
But it's okay.
I don't really know what happened now. I don't really know how you do ESG or sustainability reporting without having very clear metrics that you're working towards. That's why best practice starts with, what are my significant issues that I have to consider from a risk perspective, from an impact perspective. Then I determine Where do I want to be? Then I set those metrics and then I report against them, right? So that's why we start with the double materiality assessment right at the beginning of a project to make sure that we report against them. If we don't have the metrics, then we cannot track our performance and therefore don't know how are we doing, how far away are we. And there's very few of our stakeholders nowadays that would be okay with a fluffy type of report.
Yeah,
They'd want to see some hard-hitting facts, and that's where those metrics come in.
Thank you very much. Ilse, and from a strategic communication point of view, linking it back to the IABC standards, to what we do as strategic communication professionals, why is metrics important for you in terms of the reporting and from a communication perspective?
Yes, Christine, you know, and I think this is why I've always been very interested and passionate about corporate reporting overall, is, you know, and it links straight to the IABC principles, especially on ethical communication. For years, organizations have been able to, let's say, get away with bad behavior. And that's now changing. So I think the important thing for me is from a comms perspective is to be able to say, what are the perceptions of, Muthoni mentioned employees, they're so critical. What is their view of the organization? Investor sentiment, for example, reputation. And you've got to put in at the start, as Pieter said, you can't start if you don't have objectives. Otherwise, what are you doing? You know, there's no point to it. So there's two things I need to know at the start of a project is what is the standard that we're reporting on? And what are we going to achieve from a comms perspective? Because if those two things don't drive everything you're going to do, you don't know what sources to use, you don't know who your stakeholders internally or your content owners will be, you don't know who your stakeholders will be who need to receive the information. So, and you know, it could be fluid because from year to year, these things grow, they change, and you need to be on top of it. And because as comms professionals, we have so many touch points of different signals that will tell us perceptions on different things. We have to also play our role to synthesize that for the report. And but knowing what you've got to do, that must be a clear, accepted leadership objective at the start of the reporting process.
Absolutely, thank you. So whilst I have you, and Muthoni, I'm then going to ask you. You need to answer me in one sentence. Are there any emerging ESG trends or developments we as communicational professionals should prepare for? Pieter, I'm actually going to ask it for you as well. Okay, so what are those emerging trends that we have to be aware of? As you said, Ilse, it's going to be fluid. So you have one sentence to give me an answer in.
Who, me or Pieter?
For all three of you. So Muthoni, let's start with you.
Okay, so there's the rise of the just transition. So as the world is moving towards decarbonization, the focus is shifting. And to ensure this transition is fair and equitable, for us, this is a massive communication opportunity, okay? It's not just about reporting our own emissions reductions. It's about telling the story about how we can create green jobs, supporting SMEs to enter the renewable energy supply chain, and ensuring that local communities benefit from the green economy. So the S in ESG will become inseparable from the E.
Thank you. Pieter, what is your answer?
The broad increase in the interest of stakeholders on company sustainability performance. Okay, single sentence.
Wow, that's a long sentence, but a very impactful sentence. Thank you. Okay, Ilse, and yours?
Yeah, Pieter took mine. I was going to say something like that, but he said it better. Christine, I would say that we must be cognizant of the impact of AI on ESG reporting. Like you can't live under a rock. It is impacting it in so many ways. And it's about, it's a longer sentence now, but it's about how we are leveraging the impact of AI for reporting and the influence on stakeholders.
Super, thank you. And my last question, in 30 seconds, what is the one ESG message you would urge a CEO to communicate clearly and consistently? What's that one thing communication professionals must start doing differently today in terms of ESG? Ilse, let's start with you.
Okay, thanks. Now, Pieter can't take my answer. Okay, so for a CEO, I mean, there's a lot of things I would say, but I think CEOs have a tendency to want everything to tell a good story.
Yeah.
Like it must look good.
Yeah.
The reporting is our journey. And so that's what you need to know is we are listening, we are understanding, we're learning as we go, and we're improving. This is our goal, to improve. So that's the one thing. And for comms professionals, I want to say, put yourself in the room and educate yourself. Don't shy away. This is the moment for comms professionals.
Super, appreciate that. Thank you, Ilse. Muthoni, with you?
For the CEO, I would urge them to consistently say that our ESG report is not a summary of our expenses. It's a prospectus for our innovation.
Nice.
And it's the clearest evidence of how we are building a resilient, efficient, and valuable business for the future. Okay.
Fantastic. Thank you.
And for the comms, thank you. For the comms professional, I would say that the one thing we must do differently is to stop just being a reporter and be an innovation scout. Get out of your office, find the one person in your value chain who truly brings your ESG strategy to life and make their story in the heart of your next report. And that will start building trust.
Super, appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, Pieter, we started with you and you also have the last word. So what is your words of wisdom?
Yeah, so this time Muthoni and Ilse stole some of my thoughts, but for the CEO, I think one of the key things that when I engage with boards and senior leadership teams, including CEOs, is to implore them to stop thinking about ESG and sustainability as a standalone issue and communicate that as an integrated business strategy and imperative seamlessly with everything else that is going on, because that is the only way that it is creating real value for your company and for your stakeholders. And then from a business communication specialist perspective, I mean, you know my feeling towards the communication professionals. I would really like communication professionals, and you'll see there's some overlaps now with what Ilse and Muthoni said, to not think of themselves as the last cog in the wheel that completes something. There is no way that any company can achieve their sustainability objectives unless the communication professionals help them to drive the right narrative in a responsible way for the right audiences. If that does not happen, then a big part of the sustainability reporting component falls flat. So in my mind, communications professionals are central to actually achieving the objective. And I think they need to think of themselves in that way.
Super, Pieter, thank you so much for that. We still have 5 minutes left. I'm going to throw it open to the floor. Are there any questions from our audience that that you would like to have answered? You now have access to these 3 brilliant minds. Use it. Any questions? So apparently you are just getting praise. Great approach used to deliver this webinar. Thank you for the insights. Accountability is important. Great example of transparency. So yes, so it seems as if you actually covered all the topics that people wanted to know. So thank you very much for that. Okay. Thank you for your insights. Thank you for your time. Ladies and gentlemen, you have access to three of the most brilliant minds when it now comes to sustainability and ESG. Remember, Pieter Scholtz is from DigbyWells, Ilse is from CQ Consulting, and Muthoni is from MK Africa. Please go and hook up with them on LinkedIn, chat to them, and make use of their services. They know what they are doing. They are the best in their field, and that's what we're trying to achieve with our webinars. What I would also like just to ask you, if there's anybody on the call that's not an IABC member yet, and you're interested in becoming a member, in the chat, please drop your name and your email address. Natalie will reach out to you. And just to give you a bit of context, okay, so if you are in Botswana, 101 cups of coffee a year, that's all that it's going to cost you for your IABC membership, okay? Nigeria, I don't know why your coffee is so expensive, but you need to buy 53 cups of coffee, or maybe it's cheap. I'm not too sure which one of the analogies. In South Africa, it's a mere 145. It's not even a cup of coffee every day. Come on, guys. You can really afford it. The IABC is a fantastic organization to belong to. We try and give you as much insight as possible to make it easier. And most of all, we've got this brilliant conference at the end of October. Remember, 8 to 10 October in Cape Town, in the Vineyard. Once again, to everybody, thank you so much for your time. It was lovely having you here, and you must enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Bye.